Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Christelle Martinette, Claudia Monicelli, as I always say, Christelle Martinette, aka Claudia Monicelli. Now, this is an episode of one of my podcast on my podcast, and I'm opening up to guests, hosting guests that align with the notion of pleasure in one way or another. And today I have a really out of left field wild woman goddess coming in, and I met her by chance, and she actually comes from the same ethnic background that I do. She's a second generation, I believe, or first generation. She'll tell us herself, Italian Canadian. She lives in Canada. And she does the similar work as this. And so our topic will be talking about the soul and the soul contract. We'll be talking about an archetype, the peaceful warrior, and then getting into mediumship. So I know that a lot of you out there have been asking me so many questions, and perhaps with this interview, we'll be getting those answers. So let me first tell you a little bit about her before I have her come in. She, as I said, she's living in Canada, and she's trained, she studied at the University of Toronto. She has a degree in psychology and sociology. And today she has another hat as well, where she's a business coach for realtors. So let's welcome Sandra Porretta to our show. Come in, Sandra.
Hello, Claudia. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is just such an absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm so happy that so tell me a little bit about yourself. You can start with, your early life, how you got into this kind of work, mediumship. Mm-hmm.
That's a great story, because I'm sure you can relate when I say that these are callings. I didn't sign up for this, Claudia, at all. I am, of course, an intuitive and a medium. And for some of our listeners that may not be familiar with what an intuitive is or what a medium is, well, basically what I do is I read souls. And I speak to their spirit guides as well as I speak to loved ones on the other side. So it's an interesting journey, let me tell you. And of course, coming from an Italian family, I'm actually, my Italian background, made in Canada, so I'm first generation Canadian. And that was a very interesting experience, because many Italians have this very spiritual side to them. And there is so much beautiful history when it comes to all kinds of magical old remedies and old types of healing. It's just, we'll be here that'll be another podcast perhaps.
That's something that you would like to get into. I know that.
It's beautiful.
When you talk about mediumship, and well, that's what I do on my YouTube channel. My subscribers also subscribe to that, so they know what it is basically. But many people ask me, well, how does it happen?
Yes. How does it happen?
Maybe you could
talk about that? It just happened one evening. I was 4 years old, and I saw a gentleman standing at the foot of my bed. And as a young child, I was quite frightened. These are experiences, because there's no training. You can't go to school, to understand what it means to be a medium. There is no training for this, And I recall being a little alarmed as well, because as a little girl, of course, I was, screaming out for help. My parents came in, and my dad was like, "Bella, there's nobody in here." And I found that so strange, because I could see this gentleman at the foot of my bed who I did not recognize, as clear as I could see my mother and father. And then, honestly, Claudia, just to make it even a little more interesting, my dad walked right through him. So you can imagine what kind of an experience that was for a young child,
I can imagine.
And so from there, I understood that there was something a little bit different about me. And I was very frightened. As I grew older, you learn to accept it, and and then you fear, of course, being judged, right? Because it's not, I mean, as you mentioned, I went to University of Toronto. This is not something that we talk about. Like, this is sometimes people can judge us for these things, these abilities. And then as my children got older, I felt this calling become stronger.
This is the same. There's very similar history between us. At the same time,
Mm-hmm.
when I was 4, it happened to me, and it wasn't in
Wow.
my bedroom. It was in a church. I was
Oh, wow.
seeing spirits, and when you said there's no school for it, well, I actually found about a month ago. I found by chance, just an interview, in internet, there was, because they're closing it. There was a
Oh,
school that did cyclical retreats for psychics
interesting.
who already worked as mediums to
Right, right.
come together with other mediums and try out different forms of mediumship
Amazing.
in around Zurich in Switzerland.
No kidding.
Unfortunately, that is closing, and I think they are
Mm,
doing them, having these retreats on a one-off basis in different parts of the world.
what a
Yeah.
shame. What a shame, because there isn't enough, knowledge or information out there, and especially in the Italian culture, things were passed down word of mouth. They didn't write these things down. I don't know if you came across that in your experience,
Well,
and
there's
certain.
since my mother also was an intuitive, people just don't talk about it. They don't talk
Correct.
about it.
Correct. And it was kind of like a shush shush, go to university, just please. We don't want to hear about this. But it was interesting because the universe then put me into situations where I had no choice but to perform in this capacity. I was shopping in one of my girlfriend's shop in Stouffville here in Canada,
I
Ontario.
was going to say, give us an example.
Yeah, and I was shopping, and my girlfriend's like freaking out because the psychic that was supposed to be on, of course, on a Saturday, had called in last minute sick. And so she's looking at me. She says, "Scarlett, you're a psychic." I said to her, "No, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? I have some accidental abilities here and there, right?" This was my notion of myself. She says, "No, you're a psychic. You're going to stick around, and you're going to." And she, it was so insistent that I thought, okay, how many people are going to walk in on a Saturday in this store for readings? Well, lo and behold, I mean, I said, okay, fine, I'll do it because she was a good friend of mine and I didn't want to disappoint her, right? So I sat there. Lo and behold, I had about 5 readings that day. And after that, I thought I was done. She calls me during the week and she says to me, "Girl, I need to schedule you." I said to her, "What do you mean?" She goes, "People are requesting you. It's like wildfire. I can't control it. I need you to come back in." And then I knew the universe was speaking to me. So I thought, let me check this out. And the rest is history, of course. Here I am today.
Well, let's go on to another subject, because I know that there's something that you would like to talk about, and that is the peaceful warrior, how to
Yeah.
be a peaceful warrior. Because inside me, I come from, there were times in my life where I'm very, they called me the hot-headed Italian. I could get
A
so
hot-headed Italian? What are you saying to me, Claudia?
I would get so angry. I'd brush up like a brush fire, and then it would just pass. Get it out of my system. So, this peaceful warrior for me is a contradiction in terms. Maybe you could explain that to us.
It is a very different and interesting concept, and I remember I learned it through an aha moment, because, like you were explaining, our culture tends to be a little more passionate. I'm going to call it, right, and so it hit me like an aha moment. We go into these emotional situations where we feel attacked, like we feel like something is being taken away from us emotionally, right? We want to go into these emotional situations the same way you would go into a physical situation, right? And it just doesn't work, so our body probably needs to evolve a little bit, because maybe these emotional warrior type things or attacks is maybe something new for humanity. And so I'll give an example. So if you and I are walking down, a road, and someone comes and steals my purse, right? They grab it from out of my hand. What automatically happens to me is I kick into this adrenaline rush, and I automatically run to catch the guy to get my purse.
Absolutely. I'm right behind you.
Right? Exactly. I knew you would. And so what ends up happening is we kick in physically, and it's the same, it's that, it's no different than even someone going to war. Our soldiers that go to war, they put on protective, equipment. They put on maybe a bulletproof, jacket or a vest of some kind. They put a helmet on, and again, they're going out to do that physical task. Right? Their objective is the same thing. They're going in to take something that belongs to us, right? To restore it back to us. Well, the same thing emotionally, right? So when we feel emotionally attacked, we feel like something has been taken from us. Maybe it's a piece of our soul, maybe it's we feel compromised in some way. So we want to react with that same physiological, but that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to sit and center yourself in that peaceful.
I am being very quiet because
I
want to jump on and say, how, but
no, do it, girl.
Listening. I'm listening. Go ahead.
So you want to put on a peaceful armor instead of that physical armor. You don't want to go in and attack physically, but that's usually the reaction that we have. We attack physically to an emotional situation, and we know that that's not going to work. Well, it doesn't work, right? So instead, what we have to do is center our soul, center ourselves, our emotions, still our mind of whatever maniac thoughts are going on.
Sandra, that sometimes it's easier said than done.
It certainly
Maybe you
is.
could give me an example of how you do it or how you teach someone to do it.
Correct. And I'm going to get to that right now for you, Claudia. You put on your peaceful armor. So you literally envision yourself putting on a peaceful coat, peaceful pants, peaceful shoes, and a peaceful helmet. You envision putting these items on, okay? And you go in and you move forward because now you're cloaked in peace, right? And with peace. And now you go ahead and you handle that situation. Does that make sense?
Yes, I will try and I'll get back to you.
That's an easy way. The other way too is, when often someone is coming to us with such emotional charge, we tend to take it personal, and in some cases it is personal. But here's the thing, we need to always remain centered and with that emotional intelligence. We have to approach things with an emotional intelligence and listen to the individual's intention. Is their intention to actually cause harm to us? Is their intention to blow off some steam? Is their attention because their intention is to they're screaming and shouting for some kind of attention, right? What is their intention? And when you sit and really, when you're cloaked in this peaceful armor, you now have the ability to actually read their energy, see their energy, feel their energy, and understand what their soul is actually going through.
And hide the knives in the house.
Yes, always. That's a first. I should have included that. I apologize. I should have hide any of those harmful, sharp items first, then put your peaceful armor on.
Okay. All right. So let's leave the peaceful armor because for those of you out there, men or women who are able to do that, you may be in a better place to now speak of what the soul is all about, because you mentioned you're able to read the soul, to read that person's soul. Now, when you talk about the soul, many people have asked me, well, what is my soul's purpose, or what is my soul's contract? And living, what does it mean to live in alignment with the divine? Maybe just take your time, because they're really difficult concepts. I know. Go ahead.
Well, you know what it is? It's a very good question. And if you ask our listeners what the definition of a soul is, we will get so many different definitions. And I did actually ask a lot of my clients via social media what their definition of soul is. And the amount of questions that or not questions, comments that I got was overwhelming. I'm still replying back to them. Not one of us really truly understands what our soul is. And I found it fascinating, to read through these responses and go, wow, see, we've lost touch with what our soul
Yes.
is,
Yes.
you
And
know?
that's why I was so interested
So,
in having you on the show.
yes. And
And
so,
so but before you go on, I was
yes.
interested in knowing what kinds of answers you received, if you could
Oh,
remember some of them.
I
Like
did.
some examples, a couple of
Yeah,
examples.
I got a couple where they were very open. Where let me see if I can remember things like it's energy. It's our energy. It's who we are. It is. It existed. It'll exist after we pass away. Things like that. And it was very very open ended. But not one person said it's the essence of who we are. And you mentioned an alignment with divinity, and you are so right when you say that. So the soul is the essence of who we are. It existed before we were born, and it will exist after we pass. And of course, 100 years good health to all of us, right? But that is life. This is how it works. And so if we have to give a tangible example, because Claudia, let's be realistic, the work you and I do, girl, there is nothing tangible, very little science, understanding about it, right? So
Amen.
let me give our listeners something maybe a little tangible to think about. It's as if you have a mothership sitting in the water, and then of course the mothership
Oh,
sends out.
wait. Mothership
Absolutely.
means something different to different cultures. So
Yes,
maybe you
correct.
could explain that.
A mothership, like a big ship sitting in the water, like with the sails and everything. And it's a mothership being the main ship, right? And the main ship that sends out small little ships out to sea. Okay. And so divinity, of course, being the mother ship, correct? So that notion of this entity that's out there, and it sends us out, right? So it sends out a whole bunch of little ships out to sea. And of course, I'm one ship. And Claudia, you are one ship, and our listeners each are a ship that have come from this mothership. And we're all sailing. We're all sailing in different directions. We have no clue what we're doing here, but our mothership knows. When we sail in the direction towards our mothership, we feel a sense of calm, and like things are just falling into place, like everything makes sense to us, right? When we sail away from it, it doesn't make sense, or life is a big struggle. There is always resistance, or the emotions obviously are not in alignment with anything that is divine either, right? So that to me is a little bit of a tangible explanation of what our soul is. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, of course. Yeah.
Mm.
And what I find when I ask people to talk about the soul, it's inevitable for us to use metaphors like
Yeah.
the mothership and the journey, our soul's
Yeah.
journey, and they're all metaphors because our language is limited in how we can discuss it.
Yes.
But when you mention our soul contract, what do you refer to, and how we can glean what that
Yeah.
contract could be,
Yes.
you know?
It's no different than what I was talking about earlier about a calling. I felt the calling, and then I felt the calling despite my fear. And despite fear of being judged by others, I knew I needed to follow this path. So there is a knowing about what we do, and that is our life purpose. Now, our life purpose can vary in so many different ways. I will speak from my personal experience. It brings me joy when I am supporting others, when I am helping them obtain peace and clarity, when I'm reading them or channeling loved ones and it's giving them a sense of peace and calm. That brings me joy. And of course, if we have to look at, well, how do I figure out what my life purpose is? it's an easy thing because I want to simplify it because we complicate it more in our minds. When you are doing something that brings you genuine joy and happiness and you feel a sense of fulfilled or content, whatever you want to label it, that is when you know that you are in alignment with your soul contract, your soul purpose.
Now, what I'm thinking about expanding this, okay? Because I'm thinking of clients that come to me, and
Right.
let's have an example, all right? A woman who is a physician,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, she uses her physician skills
Correct.
toward aesthetic medicine. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
she
Mm-hmm.
works on women's faces in different ways. That's
Right.
one thing. And the other is as an assistant in different wards in the hospitals. Now,
Right.
this woman still comes to me and asks, but I need to know what I'm meant to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, when I adopt your interpretation, of course, the joy and the extending, the one very important ingredient, extending yourself outward
Mm-hmm.
to either assist or give or helping others, whatever you may want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
using what you know how to do best to assist or help or aid.
Mm-hmm.
That culminates, that gives the sense of balance. You do something that is bringing you joy, but then there is that other element, that other half element,
Yes.
But why I'm using this as an example is because when she spoke to me and she said, well, I'm doing this, I've chosen to do this and I've chosen to do that. And I thought to myself, well, now isn't that interesting, because she's giving back and she's, doing, it seems to me from the outside, but she still came with that question. But
Mm-hmm.
what am I meant to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And when you mentioned at the very beginning, Sandra, you said that I read souls.
Mm-hmm.
And I do too. Of course, we probably do it a little differently, but that part of, well, then what am I really meant to be doing
Right.
is something that I'd say 90% of the people who are watching or listening are interested in. Is there a magic formula that you have? Because I do it psychically, and
Right.
and it takes me the concentration through meditation and through the tools that I have, my tables, my charts, and all of that. I have it systematized in a certain way. I like
Right. Right.
that kind of work. How do you work it out?
You know what I find fascinating about what you're saying is, it sounds to me, and I'm going to use your physician friend as an example. She's searching for meaning. She was called to do this work, and I mean, it's really right in front of her if you stop and think. It's wherever our soul, where we feel most meaningful and what we receive as meaningful. To me, that would be the formula. I'm going to share another formula in a moment, but just to help bring clarity to that situation that you've just shared with me, she does, by the sounds of it, some cosmetic surgery on the face or whatever we want to call it. And of course, that gets criticized a lot. It gets criticized a lot.
Just like mediumship.
Correct. And it's almost like it's not a real, it's not a real doctor. I disagree. That to me is a different form of healing, because when someone goes to her and she is able to assist them with their appearance, does that not nourish someone's soul when they can look in the mirror and feel so good about themselves?
You hit it on the nose, because on her website, she actually used those words in those terms, that the reason she did that and the reason why
Right.
she applauds women who decide to do that type of
Mm-hmm.
intervention is
Mm-hmm.
because it feeds their soul.
Correct.
Interesting. Mhm.
Correct. And again, if we want to take it now from the untangible and make it tangible, when someone looks in the mirror and they dislike their appearance, what does that do for their mental well-being? Nothing positive, Claudia. Nothing positive. They're going to look at themselves. They're going to feel no positive feelings. They're going to maybe feel angry, depressed, sad. I'm so ugly,
Yes, it's true. What you're
right?
saying is true, but the way we perceive ourselves is also um, uh, due to our cultural conditioning and our social
Correct.
conditioning. So let's
Correct.
say that my idea would be, well, let me give that person another pair of glasses. Maybe they'll
Right.
see something
Right.
differently, and
Right.
it's the perception is a real, it's a big show. It's another show, because
Agreed.
the way you look at things is what you see, right?
Correct. And
If
and at the same time, it's very personal. At the same time, it's very personal. When you're looking in the mirror and you don't like what you see, that affects an individual's mental well-being. So taking away from the soul just for a moment, we bring it to something tangible. And we talk about, mental well-being, of course. That's a big topic, especially these days. And so if now this friend of yours is able to assist someone that then when they look in the mirror, they love what they see. What an incredible healing that is, whether it be physically mental well-being, and not to mention how it nourishes then the soul. It's an incredible healer. These are angels are different, but there's so many angels that walk this earth, and we all come in different shapes and sizes, and I'm certainly not talking about our appearance.
I like
It
the
is
way you said, and we all come in all different, putting that we into it.
correct, because there's many, many of us. And while we're here having a conversation about intuition and mediumship, I'm going to pose a question to our listeners, like how many times did you have a dream and you dreamt of your loved one there? How many times did you have a feeling and you acted on it and it saved you from, something maybe potentially disastrous or less disastrous, but it saved you from something. Each one of us has an ability. It's how we're called to do it. It's how we're called to use that ability.
Now, I find that to be very true, very, very true. Now, there's another topic that sort of is common to us both, and I didn't
Mhm.
think we would have time to talk about it, but if you're okay and still could answer a couple of questions, I'd love to talk about the
Absolutely.
old magical Italian
Oh,
ways.
that's in my heart, girl. It
Go
really
ahead.
is. Yeah, and there's so many things out there. Like, where do we even begin, What I'm going to ask you a question, Claudia. What out of all the old Italian ways is your favorite go-to?
I'll tell you, there was a history of whisperers, what the Italians called Sibilla,
Yes.
the witches that lived in the mountain caves,
Yes.
and they were the seers, and people used to come to, and they were always women. People
Yes.
used to bring their family, loved ones, ill ones, and talk to them. And it was all about the chatter. And there are oracle cards that I teach how to use, are called La Vera Sibilla. And
Yes.
those I like the way they talk. I like the way they chatter, and I like the way,
Mhm.
and if they don't like you, if they don't like your energy, they will not respond.
That's
That is
very
one of the, but there are a lot of things that I don't
oh,
subscribe to, because it wasn't in my culture, in my family. For example, reading oil in water and healing
correct.
with oil in water. I don't know
Correct.
if you've ever done that.
I have not done that because, like you said, culturally it wasn't something in my family either. And this is where I say there's so many of us out there, and we each have like our certain calling, When it comes to the old Italian ways, I love working with herbs. I really love using the magic in herbs. And in the Italian culture, of course, food is huge. It's huge.
Well, of course, you're going to have to give us some examples here, because at
I
least in
will.
my neck of the woods, it is dinner time. So
Oh, there you
go
go.
on, go ahead.
Well, I love making tinctures, and they're very easy to do. So I'll use rosemary. Rosemary is one of my favorite go-to, and it is used a lot in clearing dark energy. And often we do a lot of work on the outside, but rarely do we do work on the inside for our energy. So I tend to enjoy working with energy, not just on the outside, but on the inside, where we're creating that beautiful furnace of energy, as I call it. And rosemary is one of my go-to. Not only do we cook, and use it as a herb, I put it in water. So I'll take a sprig of organic rosemary, I'll put hot water on it, and I'll let it steep for a moment. And it's beautiful in giving energy. Now, when I do a lot of readings, when maybe I've done a paranormal investigation, my first thing that I go do is I drink some rosemary water, because that is just such a beautiful cleansing on the inside. But
I'm
there are
going to
so many that
jump
we
in
can
right
do.
now, if you don't
Mhm.
mind, and cut your
Please
train of
do.
thought. Maybe you can remember what you were saying. A paranormal investigation, what
Hmm.
does that mean to you?
What does that mean to me is I actually will sit in a dwelling for whatever amount of time, usually in the dark, and we have some equipment going on that will assist any spirit that is walking through the home to converse with us. And we record everything. We sit with the night vision cameras on, and my goodness, the things that you can catch. It's quite interesting.
Tell me more, because the equipment, I've looked into equipment, I've seen
Mhm.
some equipment being used on camera, and I'm not very convinced of what I'm looking at and what I'm hearing. And I'm
Yes.
wondering what the equipment actually does when you work with it.
You got it. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because you really have to take all of this with a grain of salt. It is really such a new science. And so people are playing with things. The best equipment I have is a camera and having a conversation. I should maybe say two pieces of equipment, because when you sit and have a conversation, very much like what you and I are, and we're recording this, of course, you can hear the conversation, right? When you are recording and you're having a conversation with spirit in the home, you will see things happening. You will, if you have the other, I should actually say here, another piece of equipment that I like is a really high sensitive recorder, where you can pick up actually sounds and voices. And those are really, really difficult to deny. And when you see, uh, orbs, I'll use orbs because a lot of people are familiar with that. There is many, many things out there that you can see, but I'll use orbs.
Maybe you
When
can
you,
explain what an orb is. So for
an
some
orb
people who
is
don't know.
absolutely, an orb is a ball of light, and it's a ball of energy, and it can appear to the naked eye like nothing, right? But then when you are maybe on a night vision camera, you can see it a little more clear. And then there are times where a camera will catch an orb, and the odd time the naked eye will catch an orb. It's amazing when you see an orb not just flying mindlessly, but it actually interacts. That's then when you've captivated something. And
And when you say you've captivated, do you see it then on camera?
yes, you
Yes.
do.
And the recorder, is it sensitive enough to get some sound?
It certainly is. It's
And
sensitive enough to get quite a bit.
what kind of sound do you hear? What we would call in Italian fruscio, like
Right.
a passing along of a hard surface like your hand, like I'm going with my hands. Is something like
Right.
that?
Sometimes you do, but mostly you actually hear words.
Okay.
We've caught whistles.
Hmm.
I recall one time we were sitting in the basement of a haunted location, and we're sitting in the dark, and it was myself and three other investigators, and I heard a whistle, and I reacted, no different than anything else, right? So I reacted. I turned. I said, "Did you hear that whistle?" And one of the other investigators, she had agreed. She said, "Yeah, I heard a whistle." Well, it came out on what is called the EVP. It came out. So you hear this whistle, and it's very faint. Don't think it's going to be like a conversation like you and I are having. It's very faint. And you hear this whistle, and then all of a sudden you hear my voice. "Did you hear that whistle?" And so it's quite interesting how you can captivate it. But you can hear them. They actually will say they will actually tell you information, their name from time to time, how old they are. Like, it depends on how you phrase the questions, but you will actually hear words or you will hear sounds.
I do that without equipment. I do that. That's how I
Yes,
channel. But
correct.
I'm interested in knowing if the equipment helps you, or is it used just to, let's say, correlate what, some kind of correlation with what you saw already?
Good question. What a good question. See, for me, like you, I mean, I predominantly hear whispers. It's not uncommon for me to hear spirit. It's just not uncommon. For me, what it does is it provides proof. I don't need the proof because I hear it all the time, but there are people out there who would like that proof. So it provides proof. And a perfect example of that is exactly what I just said about I hear a whistle and then it actually was caught. No, two other people did not hear the whistle. Just myself and another lady heard the whistle. And so it was interesting proof. And even for myself, validation. Sometimes we need that.
Sure,
It
sure.
it's
We need
it's tough
validation
sometimes.
a lot of times. Yeah, lots of times.
Certainly.
And so you kept saying we, so there were a group of other investigators, you called them.
Correct.
And do they do the same type of work that you do? Is this a circle of intuitives or friends out for a good time?
Very good question. It's actually a paranormal investigation team. They've been doing it for years. And long story, I mentor psychic children for free because of my personal experience as a child, and so
How do they come to you? Through a parent that
through a parent.
understands the child is
Correct,
psychic?
correct, correct. And when I'm dealing with the children, I always have the parent present. I will not have a conversation with the child without the parent present, out of respect for so many reasons, right? I reached out to this paranormal team because in a situation that I was dealing with one of my psychic kids, whatever tools I was giving this child would help, but it wasn't getting rid of the problem. Okay, and he kept seeing this gray energy around him, and of course it would frighten him. So I said, okay, there's something else happening. I'm going to bring in a paranormal team, and we're going to bring you some validation. And we had a great investigation that night, and my psychic kid, as I call them, was able to assist the spirit that kept following him to cross over with his family. So it was it was a beautiful experience.
It was an earthbound soul. I was going to
Yeah.
get to that because since I guess at the beginning of the year, January this year, I
Right.
have been receiving earthbound souls on a regular
Oh,
basis, and I would say 90% of the souls that I channel are souls knocking on my door at night and asking for passage.
correct.
And after that event,
Mhm.
did the child also continue being mentored by you, working with you?
Yes.
And
Yes.
how did you notice change in the way he's a boy, reacted?
It's a young boy. He's 12 years old, and first of all, his confidence soared to be able to get some validation through the paranormal team. And with the equipment, we were able to assist him in actually understanding what he had been hearing and seeing, and that's how he was able to pass over this soul. It gave him tremendous confidence, and he continues. His ability also heightened a little bit more after that experience because we removed the element of fear and confusion. So it was quite interesting, and he's quite a young man.
Interesting, at the age of 12 to seek
Yeah.
out help. It's quite interesting that the parents
Oh,
thought of
his
doing
mom's
that.
amazing. Yeah,
How
she's
did they
amazing.
find you?
They found me. It's a word of mouth.
Well,
I
this is a loaded question because I want to get the information for my viewers and audience. So
Great.
how could they find you if they
If they're
need you? Do you
looking,
have a
if
website?
they absolutely, I have a website and of course social media, both on Instagram and Facebook. I am Scarlett's Soul Cafe, so it's nice and easy. And I do have a website that they can email me on, and it's scarlet-whispers.com. And it's Scarlet with one T. Sometimes people put two T's in there, so not to get confused. But yeah, either way is I mean, any way there is fine for them to reach me.
So you said that the parents found you through word of mouth in,
Correct.
and is that how the children who come to you are always found? Is that how they find you?
Some of them are, because I've done readings on a family member, and then of course in a discussion they say, oh, you should have a conversation with Scarlett. And in some cases, the mothers themselves are my client. And part of their challenge, sometimes they'll just in frustration say, I don't know what to do, and that's how the conversation starts.
It's been just an eye opener, and such a pleasure, because the more we speak about it in public, the more um, commonplace it will be, and the less
Correct.
fear, because so many people see spirits, and so many
Correct.
people are afraid of that.
Yes.
And even though they would like to, I mean, people come to us to talk to spirits,
Yes, they
their
do.
loved ones who have passed, but they themselves have difficulty in accepting or embracing the notion of trying to communicate directly. So I'm so happy that you were able to take time out and visit us and talk with me. It was a pleasure, Scarlett.
An absolute pleasure, Claudia. I can't thank you enough for inviting me. Yeah, I
My
absolutely
pleasure.
love your podcast. I love what it represents.
Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoy listening to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope one day you'll be back. Bye bye, Scarlett.
Take good care. Bye.